So today, ladies and gentlemen, we're in a 1990 Mitsubishi Eclipse. I have been dying to drive a first gen DSM for the entire length of my channel, and we finally found one. Thank goodness. I'm gonna be real with you guys. It wasn't because I didn't want to. I just couldn't find one that was running correctly. Now we found a very clean one, and it's pretty near bone stock. It has some cooling upgrades from Mishimoto and stuff like that. But other than that, the body is in great shape. The paint has a little bit of issues in it, but let's be real here. We're worried about how the car drives. With the first gen Eclipse, this was a very interesting era of cars because the word, or I guess you could say the abbreviation DSM came to be because of Diamond Star Motors. Diamond Star Motors was a collaboration between Mitsubishi and Chrysler, and with that, they created this Eclipse, the Talon from Eagle, and also the Plymouth Laser. But the Laser was eventually ditched, and they kept the Eclipse and the Talon through the second generation as well. Then in the third generation, it was all Eclipse. That's all that was left. A lot of people think the Eclipse lost its way after the second generation, myself included. I mean, that one, it just completely went away from what it used to be. I mean, this is a GSX. So the GSX was the 4G63 turbocharged all-wheel drive model. It was rated for 195 horsepower, which might not sound like a lot, but I'm telling you guys, this thing feels peppy. The car is like 3,000 to 3,100 pounds, and it moves, it scoots. I'm really surprised. Another thing I want to add too is it has pretty long gears. So you get in it and you know when to shift. But when you're just cruising, like at really low speed, I accidentally shifted into third way too early. I did not like it at all. So you just gotta be wary of that. But honestly, if you think about it, if you were to put a bunch of boost to it, it's a really good gear ratio because it can handle it. I will say that once you get on a pretty curvy back road, the steering is pretty touchy in a good way. It's very direct. Wow. And the thing is, with the all-wheel drive, you can stay in it. And brake. Yeah, these gears are very, very long. I'm in second. This is the most fun 195 horsepower I've ever felt. I'm not even kidding. I think it's just the character of the engine itself. I've always liked the 4G63, and especially, you know, when you put a big giant turbo on it, it's so violent. It's unlike anything else. And tons of people love the 4G63 because for being a 4-cylinder, you can really squeeze power out of it pretty easily. Reliably though, a lot of people cut corners, and that's why DSM has a pretty bad name when it comes to reliability. People are making like 600, 700, 800 horsepower out of this, and a lot of them with the high horsepower tend to crap walk because you get the front wheel drive spinning and the rear wheel drive spinning. But when it's bone stock, it's like a very healthy power band. You just go into it, go into boost, and it just scoots. It's great. So with this car, it has the inky wheels, and also it had suspension upgrades. That's coilovers on it, got BCs on it. And the owner of this car was telling me that the stock suspension was so bad that you could take your hand and go like this and compress it like a stress ball. So if y'all can't afford a stress ball somehow, just go get an Eclipse spring, you'll be fine. Point of the matter is, it sits pretty, the lines of the car look great, and they're commonly mistaken for 240s all the time because of that hatch in the back, specifically S13 hatches. So another thing I would like to add, the owner of this car, Chris, got this car for an absolute steal, and I'm very jealous. To find a low mile DSM is an achievement, let me tell you. Most have over 200,000 miles, and I'm just gonna smile real quick because that's so much fun. And this is his play car, and to get this play car, this car is probably worth like 5 to 6 grand, but he got it for $2,500. And the interior is a little rough. It has the notorious 90s dash issue where it just starts falling apart or has cracks or tears, what have you. The leather has some rips in it. But honestly, when it comes to comfort, the seats are pretty comfortable, but they don't hold you in place at all. So I'm sure if you went around a really hard bend, you're just gonna be flopping all over the place. With the all-wheel drive, that's what made this car so special. And back then, this car was pretty fast. And all-wheel drive in a production car, you know, Audi kind of mastered that with the Quattro, and then other companies started taking it. And then all of a sudden, DSMs came along, and people had to have the all-wheel drive model. But you might not have known that in Europe, they had an all-wheel drive model, but it was naturally aspirated, and it was open diff. So it was like the biggest screw over possible. Here in the States, we got lucky. We got a pretty solid car if you took care of it. If you take care of it, they run pretty well. If you cut corners, you're never gonna run again. That's pretty much what happens. And the car typically has around 12 pounds of boost, so it's nothing too vicious. So it comes in with a very linear power band. It's not gonna scare you, but it is enough to have fun. So the car also had a refresh at one point, and the car started out with flip-up headlights. That's how you know you're in the 80s or the 90s. But then in 92, they went with these really long, solid headlights, and it just kind of looks like it's squinting the whole time. It's just very weird kind of front end. I prefer this front end a lot more personally, but a lot of other people prefer the other one. So, to each their own. There was really hardly any big major differences between the Talon's version of the all-wheel drive and this one as well. But I will say, cars in the 90s had a certain charm to them. And a lot of the Japanese cars weren't really built to last because of their policies on, you know, they want you to keep trading in your car once it hits a certain amount of miles, a lot of the cars will fall apart. Not in a negative way. I'm not hating on the cars, it's just they weren't really built to last more than 10 to 20 years. The insides of these cars, they always have driver focus. I mean, you got it with the Supra, you got it with the RX-7, you got it with everything. Everything is towards the driver, and it makes you feel super special. And then the steering wheels all look goofy. That's the other thing. Brakes are good enough for how light the car is. They don't bite instantly, but they bite, so that's the important thing. Oh yeah. Wow, all right. It's fun. What am I doing with my life? Since the turbo is so small, there's just like hardly any lag. As soon as you hit like 3,500 to 4 grand, you're moving, you're scooting. And by the time you look at your speedo, you're like, how does this car only have 195 horsepower? And that's when it was new. God knows how much it makes now. Even then, it's a really enjoyable car to drive. It's a shame there's not many of these left. So believe it or not, something I learned today was some people take the second gen motors and they rip them out, and they'll put the first gen motor in because it handles boost and everything better. It's a 6-bolt motor, so the crank walk and everything else isn't as big of an issue. But not too many car platforms out there do that, where you go backwards and then you go forwards. Most of the time, companies improve instead of taking 2 steps back. So that's really odd to me. But this one, I was hanging out at the Gwinnett Thursday car meet here in Georgia, and I ran into it. And I ran into Chris, and he's like, hey dude, I have a car you might like. And I was like, please don't be like another car I've done a million times. And he said he had a first gen Eclipse, and I was like, unfortunately, my first gut said doesn't work. And that wasn't me hating on it. It was literally me curious about that. And to my surprise, the car had 94,000 miles on it, and it still runs awesome. Now I really understand why a lot of people make these around 300 to 400 horsepower. And if they don't cut corners, I can see how they do it reliably. But at the same time, parts can be kind of hard to come by sometimes. So it's not like if you find another Japanese motor like a 2J or something along those lines where you can walk into an AutoZone or an O'Reilly's and be like, hey, I need this. And they'll be like, okay, we'll get it. Because it was so mass produced. And you think with Chrysler being such in conjunction with Mitsubishi, like they were just like freaking pen pals, essentially, you'd think the parts would be everywhere. But they're not. Eclipses have always intrigued me because I think it's just because of the Fast and Furious era and everything else. We've always been intrigued by these turbo 4-cylinders, and believe it or not, I wanted a 2nd gen Eclipse as my first car forever. I looked for a GSX for like 2 years and I couldn't find one that was running right. And it was probably a blessing that I didn't take on one that was breaking all the time. But at the same time, it's a good platform to learn stuff on. And other than that, it's a fun car to drive at the end of the day. I'm gonna slow down now. All right, guys, I wanna thank you so much for watching this quick little review video. I hope you had a fantastic time watching, because I had a fantastic time driving this 1st gen DSM, and it gave me a whole new perspective about them. I like them a lot. With that, I hope you all have a fantastic day, and I will see you next time. Take it easy.